How did we get here? And why are we so dependent on other countries for our food supply? Answers to this and more coming up. Let's roll.
We've handed over our food security to someone else, and they're here to help you take it back. It's the Farm2Table Direct Show with Ryan and Keith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Farm2Table Direct Show. Across the table over here is my brother Ryan.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm Keith. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the fertilizer crisis and how it relates to the Great Reset. We got an awful lot to cover tonight. Yeah. And we better get it started.
I'm guarantee you it's packed full of content on this particular episode, and we are going to uncover a whole lot of, stuff, and including some fertilizer. Who would have thought we would be in a fertilizer shortage?
I know.
In a country full of stuff.
Why? We're America, right?
Yeah, we got everything.
I mean, why are we hurting for anything? Why should we have to hurt for anything since we've got a country that has built itself up this far?
Right.
You know, we became the most powerful economy in the world.
Yeah, not that long ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. And since then, things have happened.
Well, there's been a whole lot of things happening, as we're going to dig into here in just a few seconds. This didn't start with the most recent election or the most recent events such as COVID-19.
It did not.
This started over 50 years ago.
All right, and we're going to get into that. We're going to share that. And I think that we were going to start off by talking about the Club of Rome.
That is, in fact, the first place we're going to go. We're going to set the backstage or the backstory, if you will, of what happened in the late 60s and kind of who some of the major players were and what was birthed out of that, where that led to, that leads us to where we are today. And some of this stuff, folks, I mean, as we go through it, and even as I read through it, it's like, what does this really have to do with fertilizer?
All right.
But what we'll see as we go through is these connective tissue, these connecting pieces and these connecting players really create a bigger picture that will lead as we go through the show to demonstrate that this isn't necessarily incident or accidental to what's going on.
Well, personally, bro, I'm already to the point that I don't, but I will leave it to our audience to decide.
Right.
You know, once you see all of the dots, we'll try to connect them, but it's ultimately up to you to decide whether or not you think it's what we're claiming here.
Right. We're just here to kind of provide the information, give you the information we've read, show you what we and tell you what we have come across. And if you want to research this, we encourage it, certainly.
Right.
But to kind of paint the bigger picture. And I think we can just kind of get right into that. You brought up the Club of Rome.
Right.
And that is quite an interesting organization that I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard of until just recently. Was listening to Ice Age Farmer.
Oh, yeah.
And they had I will try not to butcher his name too much, Frederick Leroy. He's a doctor. He's out there. You can search that fella up and search Ice Age Farmer. Watch it. He's got him on there. It is a very, very informative and in-depth and kind of shaped where I was going with the history of where we're at now, because there was just so much history compacted in and so many links. And so the first one of the ones they brought up was the Club of Rome. Now, as you can see up here, actually, I don't know if it's scrolled over or not, but there we go, right down there. Most influential organizations begin with the meeting. 1965, Aurelio Pecci, an Italian industrialist, and made a speech anyway. Alexander King, he was the Scottish head of science at the OECD. They found they had a common concern for the long-term future. That's what they say. This is off of the clubofrome.org, their history. 3 years later, 1968, they convened a meeting in Rome of European scientists. Their goal was to advance three core ideas that still define the Club of Rome today: global and long-term perspective, and the concept of problematic Problematique, a cluster of intertwined global problems, economic, environmental, political, or social. And a key thing, and we're about to jump right into now, I'll link this up, but one of the other founders of this and involved heavily in this was a fellow by the name of David Rockefeller.
Right.
Which, many of us have heard the name Rockefeller, we know, through that family. And we'll hear some more ties with the Rockefeller family as we go through this history. But what happened in 1970, Jay Forrester, a systems professor at MIT, offered, and then later did, use computer models with the World 3 computer to study the problems which concern the group. I don't know how to explain it, but it was models of the Earth and what certain outcomes would be when it came to population, it came to natural resources, and they that were what they consider finite resources. And how the population growth, how industrial growth, how economic growth, and the depletion of these finite resources what would ultimately happen.
Right.
Anyway, they released it in 1972. It was the club's first major report. It's called The Limits to Growth. You can find it out there, folks. I downloaded a copy of it, and it's a read. It's scientific. It's got a lot of graphs. It's got a lot of things, but it was not without challenge.
Now, was this the one that Nixon had commissioned?
No,
or is this a different
that's a different one. No, we're going to follow on to that one here just in a minute.
Okay.
This was kind of their own report, but it did kind of set the stage. This was the first one to really begin to set the stage for a lot of the environmental policies and a lot of the environmental think that even continues today, 50 years later. It's still a major influencer in their train of thought. Now, they started in Rome, but they are now in Switzerland. That's where their headquarters is. They have 100 what they call members or core members. It's like that's their main. And then they have associates. There's a tier system, and you can go on to clubofrome.org and read that. I'm not going to bore us all with all of that stuff, but one of the things they say 50 years later, so today, no doubt that the ecological footprint of humanity substantially exceeds its natural limits every year. So they're saying that basically our footprint in the environment is bigger than nature can handle, or its natural limits every year. We're overreaching our.
So, of course, that makes me ask the question, well, what happens when we reach that limit? I mean,
well, what their model said, as soon as 2052, but as late as 2100, 2 of their 3 models pretty much resulted in a crash of a sharp downturn of population, a sharp downturn of natural resources, a sharp downturn of basically our ecosystem and farming. Everything was just a real sharp drop.
Now, was this an IBM computer system of some sort?
Well, it may have been
up with this back years ago.
Right. They called it the World 3 computer, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm assuming based on 1968 to 72, it was probably one of those computers that took a wall.
Right. I mean, it's probably not as strong as this cell phone.
This was a very simple, by our standards today, very simple computer. It had very simple things, but it's like any computer system, only as smart as the data that's put in it. But they ran 3 models. 2 of the 3 did that. The third model, which they don't talk about very much, everything just trucked right on along. Life was fine.
Right. Well, and if I remember right, they were setting dates back then based on those models.
They set dates and parameters.
They weren't way out to 2050, or were they in this particular report?
In this particular one, they were. Now, the next one that we're going to move over to, and like I said, if you want to know about Club of Rome, there's plenty of headlines, there's plenty of stuff out there, but there's also their own, and that's where we read from.
Clubofrome.org and their history.
And certainly, it's quite interesting. I mean, like I said, it's business leaders. There's all kinds of people involved with them. I mean, there's even some reports that like Bill Gates and some of those people were linked with that. And so, I mean, it started 50 plus years ago, but it's still a very active and substantial partner in the environmental world.
Right.
Now, this next report and what you brought up about where the dates were not so far out, this was the Rockefeller Commission on Population and American Growth.
Right.
This was commissioned by Richard Nixon. The Nixon administration is who actually kind of put this together, and he chose Rockefeller again. One of the Rockefellers to. And the name is escaping me right here. Let me see if I had it written in my notes. I do. Oh, John Rockefeller.
Okay.
John.
So
we got David
to John.
and then John.
Right.
And there is another one coming up later too. But David, so John Rockefeller, 1968. So interesting, at the same time as the Club of Rome was starting their stuff with MIT and their study and beginning to put that together, Nixon got with Rockefeller and they put this report together, Population and the American Future.
Yeah.
And it was specifically targeted for America. Now, they were looking at the year 2000. And,
right. I remembered that.
Right. They were looking at the year 2000, and a few of the models went as far up as 2020. So just recent.
All right.
And, one of the things that they stated, and I'm going to get into this one part, but one of the things they stated was that large populations could avoid cost price by switching to synthetic foods or factory foods.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading this somewhere way down in the article.
It is. It's way down in there, and it's down at the end. But what the section of the report that I'm reading, it's got quite a bit, but it talks about energy and it talks about recreational things and pollution and so on. But the part that I'm focusing on for the purpose of our show, as far as the farm to table, is agricultural land and food prices. And now this was written, this was 68, came out, so probably 70, all around the same time, right there in the late 60s, early 70s. The environment was a new hot button issue. And Richard Nixon, being ever the skilled politician, recognized that there were certain, aspects that, he needed to address this. This was an issue that was going on. So he commissioned this report.
I see.
Now, so the commission wrote, at a time when the federal government pays farmers to hold land out of production, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
something's...
We're paying farmers to not farm their land.
I'm sure that they had a reason.
Well,
you know what I mean? Maybe it was price control.
I don't know if it was price control or if it was just trying to preserve the land, or I don't know. I mean, that's
right.
It's one of those question marks I haven't got to.
Well, I actually remember when that was going on.
Right. Well,
some of it, maybe not as early as 68. I wasn't paying attention to that back then. But
I remember
it
continued.
In the 80s, I believe.
It continued.
That it was
it says here, it seems absurd to be looking forward to a scarcity of good agricultural land and rising food prices. That was back here at this time. Yet these are the prospects indicated by our analysis of what rapid United States population growth implies. So basically, as our population grows, the amount of available, arable, usable land would shrink. And that's what they say. It emerges from combining the requirements for feeding a rapidly growing population with a sound environmental policy, which restricts the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. All right. So again, we're already here.
Right.
We're on to fertilizer. Number of reasons believing the nation will wish to limit the application of these chemicals, but to do so will retard improvements in per acre productivity, which means to produce a given quantity of food, more acres must be brought into production. So, I mean, likely all high-quality land will have been returned to production by the year 2000. Consequently, the task of feeding the more rapidly growing population pushed to bring an additional 50 million acres of low-quality land into production. Expensive undertaking, heavy investment in equipment, fertilizer, and manpower, for which the farmer must be compensated. The result is 50 years from now, so 1970. So to 2000. Population resulting from a 3-child average. They studied this on a 2-child average, a 3-child average.
I remember reading that.
Could find itself having to pay farm food prices some 40 to 50% higher than they would be otherwise. Have you been to the grocery store lately, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah. The needs of the population, lower growth rate, practically no price increase. So, but here's where we were talking about earlier. The larger population could avoid the price by shifting away from consumption of animal livestock towards vegetables and synthetic meats. Burger King.
Right.
And soy-based meats or plant-based meats.
Right.
Perhaps it would shift to a closed system of agriculture. That means food from factories.
Right.
So no more growing food. It's all produced. Solution can be found. The problem for a growing population is to survey the possible solutions and select the ones it dislikes the least.
Right.
So really,
so you can see that the seeds of the ideas were not recently.
Oh no,
but they have been talking about it. For decades. Yeah, 50 years at least.
And honestly, and I tried to research this out. This next statement I'm going to make, it's not in my my tabs because I was just unable to actually locate the article, and so I didn't want to bring a tab up. But I will reference it, that there was as early or late, depending on how you want to look at that, but as far back as 1929, there were op-eds in regards to farming and agriculture, and that there was a belief that this would become a wealthy man's hobby. That because of the cost of things and availability of land.
Industrialization.
In 1929, I mean, look at what was happening. I mean, it was the end of the booming 20s. The Depression era was beginning. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I haven't read it. It was referenced, and I just haven't been able to locate it. But still, to think back nearly 100 years ago, 90-something years ago.
Well, they're saying similar things right now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This conversation's not new. Is really my point with that.
Right.
So anyway, we're up to the 1970. We're up to this. It doesn't say we've talked for a few minutes and we haven't got very far.
That's it.
But it's going to go real fast from here,
right?
Because in the early 1970s, not around that time frame, at the same time that this Rockefeller report was being released in 1970, it's coming out. A gentleman came on the scene who is a major influence in our environmental policies, our environmental our environmental direction, even to this day. His influence and footprint is still massively wide, even though he passed away several years ago. And his name was Maurice Strong.
Right, Maurice Strong.
Right. He is considered the godfather of the environmental movement. He was he started out actually really low educated person, didn't finish high school, but he went into different things. Somehow or another, he learned. He was a smart guy, right connections. He actually made his money in the oil and gas business,
which is really interesting
for an environmentalist,
right? Who
came out of that. And let me back up here on this just a second, because I'd passed it. But let's see. He took interest in oil business, oil specialist, and made acquaintance with one of the figures in the oil industry, Jack Gallagher. Hired him assistant at Dome Petroleum. Occupied several roles, including vice president of finance. 56, he set up his own firm, MF Strong Management, investors in locating opportunities in the Alberta oil patch. He took over a natural gas company in the 50s called Ajax Petroleum, built it to one of the largest companies in the industry, Norkin Resources. Attracted to Canada's principal investment corporation with interest in energy and utility business, Power Corporation of Canada, appointed him initially as its executive vice president and then president. So this guy's moving up. Now here's where one of his two things happened. We'll get in at 76. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau came back and to head their national oil company, Petro-Canada.
Now, Trudeau sounds like a very familiar name of
Right.
recent articles,
Well,
and they're related.
The father of Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau, that's
and,
right.
To say that the apple didn't fall far from the tree is accurate.
Yeah, this is right on target,
Right
actually.
on. And I could go on. There's a bunch of stuff, but now, and I'll come back to this later on, but let's see, where was it at? 1980, 70s, 80s. Anyway, he purchased some land in Colorado, 160,000 acres in Baca Ranch in Colorado. And the Manitou Foundation is there, and we'll get into that later with his wife.
Okay, right.
Hannah Strong, and she's since remarried. But anyway, there's a lot to that.
Right.
It's kind of a little, I'm bringing it up partly because it matters to him, and another part, when I get into it in a little while, it's a sense of irony. That's just kind of one of those things. But what happened is 1972, we had the Stockholm Summit.
Right.
I'm not moving. I'm just going to talk for just a second.
Okay.
The Stockholm Conference, 71. It's okay. He commissioned. Let's see. He met with a leading UN official all the way back in 1947. So he was very busy. Worked as a security officer. And into the 60s, Canadian International Development. But anyway, in 71, commissioned a report on the state of the planet. Only one Earth, the care and maintenance of a small planet. Had a couple of co-authors, Barbara Ward, Rene Dubois. Anyway, summarized the findings, 152 experts, 58 countries, in preparation for the first UN meeting on the environment held in Stockholm, 1972, 50 years ago, the world's first State of the Environment report.
Right.
It established the environment as a part of international development agenda and led to the establishment by the General Assembly, UN General Assembly, of the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, which is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya. And he was the first leader, the first director, was Maurice Strong.
Wow.
A businessman,
right.
Oil, gas.
So already you've got the roots of environmentalism.
Right. All the way back there.
Right. And this is a guy, ironically, that is, got his start in the oil industry, and now he's talking about
environmental.
Environmental.
Right. And one of his own statements was that he was a socialist. How would he put it? He was a radical, like socialist, like when it came to social stuff, but he was a capitalist by method. It was his own. He was a weird mix of
I would have to take some time to think through that and tear that apart, because I don't get that.
He's an interesting read to study. This guy, his history, was considered one of the most connected people in the world, and certainly in Canada.
By the end of this, I think everybody out here is going to see how connected this guy was and how influential he was.
So, he was one of the commissioners of the World Commission on Environment and Development, but again, a UN organization, 1983. Now, UNEP is what came out of the first summit, if you will, the first thing.
Right.
And there's also in the Stockholm Environment, which I'll get to in a minute, the SEI, Stockholm Environmental Institute. You're going to scratch your head on that one. But anyway, Strong leading UN, UN advisory assignments. But anyway, the Earth Summit, and we're going to fast forward here a little bit, 1992. So here we are, 20 years later.
72 to 92.
20 years.
Yep.
UNEP has happened. There's been not a lot of progress. I mean, but there was some agencies that came out, and there was some direction, but the primary was UNEP. But the Earth Summit happened in Rio de Janeiro. Okay.
Mm-hmm. This was in 92.
This was in 1992, Rio de Janeiro, the Earth Summit. According to Strong, they adopted sound principles, but did not make a commitment to action sufficient to prevent global environmental tragedy.
Seems to me like they may lament that.
Right. Anyway, it's, Boutros Ghali even stated that the current level of commitment is not comparable to the size and gravity of the problems. After that, he established the Earth Council, co-chair of the Earth Charter Commission, chairman of the World Resource Institute, membership on the board of International Institute for Sustainable Development, and the Stockholm Environment Institute, which we will get to here shortly. Africa-America Institute, Institute of Ecology in Indonesia, the Bejer Institute of Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, Foundation Director of the World Economic Forum, Senior Advisor to the President of the World Bank.
Where have I heard those things before?
Okay. Member of the International Advisory of Toyota Motor Corporation, Advisory Council for Center for International Development at Harvard, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We'll talk about them in just a little bit.
Where does he find the time?
Right. World Conservation Union, World Wildlife Fund, Resources for the Future, Eisenhower Fellowships. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, there is, he lobbied to change NGO, with non-governmental organizations' perspectives on the World Bank. He's believed to have inspired by some to inspire the works of former U.S. Vice President Al Gore on climate change.
I'm shocked.
Right. Anyway, he's took on a whole lot of things. Now he wasn't without scandal. There was some stuff with the Oil for Food program in 2005. Some stuff about a check being written. Anyway, Strong stepped down from his UN post. His tangled nest of personal relationship, public-private partnerships, murky trust funds, unaudited funding conduits, and interwoven enterprises the modern UN has come to embody, in which Strong had a major role.
Okay, so I just heard something. Public-private partnership. Now, roughly what year are we in when that first enters onto the scene?
Well, my first mention of it here was 2005.
So 05.
But he is considered the originator, if you will, of the public-private partnership.
Okay, so it didn't just come about.
No, he started this in the 70s.
Administration, right?
He started this even way back in the 70s. Through the UN.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not something that just came in.
Right. His environmental activities went way back.
They found that non-governmental organizations, in connection with that, was just a real good way to funnel money from philanthropists and activists and stuff to specific people and causes and stuff. So, not saying, just saying. Now I will give you. Now this was something. This was. I'm switching on here for just a second. This was called "Quick and Dirty Profile of a Socialist Con Man." That was their words. This is on channelingreality.com. It's an article by Henry Lamb, ties Rockefeller, who's behind the North American Union, to the socialist environmental agenda, to the use of environmental front groups who steal private property for their profit, hiding behind environmentalism. This experience, talking about the Earth Summit in 1972, may have been the genesis of Strong's realization that NGOs provide an excellent ways to use NGOs to couple the money from philanthropists and businesses with the objectives of government, public-private partnerships. In 1959, he created his own company, MF Strong Management, serving as executive vice chair of President Campaign, so on and so forth. I read all of that. He told her, we controlled many companies. This was in an article. He told Elaine Dewar, we controlled many companies, controlled political budgets. We influenced a lot of appointments. Politicians got to know you and you them. Maury Strong, director of Earth Summit. The output session, human environment was the basis for, and I'm not going to get into this because it's a whole other show. La Paz Agreement creates the border region between our country and Mexico. And the EPA was put in charge of the area with the power to expand authority and accept financing from outside sources, i.e. Rockefeller Foundation and others. Richard Nixon created the EPA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That came out of that report. Right. Earth Summit, he was appointed not for his demonstrated interest in the environment, but because the Swedish representative to the UN believed that only Strong, with his extensive worldwide network of friends, could get both the developed and developing nations to participate. He was very busy, blah, blah, blah. He was recruiting people for Trudeau's new government. Managing his private Trudeau investments. Let's see. He also took a position as a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation, which supplied a grant for running of the Stockholm Conference at their office there. Let's see. Far more international significance ever reported. NGOs were funded by the Canadian government to attend the conference to give the appearance of participation by the general public. Of course, they were only personally selected by Strong, received funding. So that's just this article.
So out of all of that, I'm seeing some names pop up, like Trudeau, and Rockefeller, and of course Maury Strong
himself, and
also the fact that he was extremely well connected and might have been one of the only ones that could be effective at influencing
because
the
he had
world
so
leaders.
Many connections,
and
so that's
apparently we have some kind of a storm thing going on here.
Well, yes, the storm alert. Silence is golden, my brother. So moving on, because we're burning a lot of time there. UNEP, which we talked about, the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP. It's been the global authority that sets the environmental agenda, promotes the coherent implementation of the environmental dimension of sustainable development within the United Nations system, serves as authoritative advocate for the global environment. That was the organization that came out of the 71 Stockholm conference and was headed by Maurice Strong. Still going today. It's climate action, chemical pollution action, nature, so on and so forth. Through its campaign World Environment Day. It has grown. It is, there's some things that they've put out, 2030 agenda for sustainable development, the future we want. Anyway, you can look that up. It's UNEP.org.
So this is just another in a long list of organizations that were basically created by this group. I would call them more like a cabal of people.
A global cabal.
Right, a global cabal.
Financially wealthy. Backers, financiers, if you will.
Politically
connected.
Right.
And we're going to tie a picture here of how they're using this. I used the term the other day when we were talking, grifters. People who produce nothing yet profit from that.
Wow.
And now the next thing, and I mentioned this, was the Stockholm Institute or Environmental Institute, SEI.
SEI, right.
Again, this
Not
one
to
came
be confused with SEIU.
Right. This came out of the 92 Rio. This kind of had this. This is another one of the Maurice. This is a tie-in. This is part of his downstream of him. What's the word? Downline. Yeah, his downline. But anyway, read this for you just for if you can click over on that, bro. I don't know if you got the
Yeah, I've got Stockholm.
Okay, you've got it there. I just don't know if you're down far enough down where I'm at. Okay, right there. Yeah. I think so. I'll read it. We connect science and decision making to develop solutions for a sustainable future for all. Sounds good. There's that sustainable word again.
Yeah.
Our work spans climate, water, air, and land use issues. That's all kind of important to things. Governance, the economy, gender, and health. Kind of curious about what an environmental agency has to do with gender.
With gender, right.
Here's one of my favorite words. Stakeholder involvement is at the heart of our efforts to build capacity, strengthen institutions, and equip partners for long-term change. So, works on 5 continents. anyway, they are very much tied in, and they are one of the many, international nonprofit research and policy organization. Yeah,
Right.
Again, go on SCI.org, read for yourself.
Right. And throughout this whole thing, one of the things that I continue to ask myself is, why do they need so many organizations to make this dream come true of theirs?
I don't know.
But they got a bunch of them.
And it keeps going. I haven't even finished. It's crazy.
Everybody seems to be making up their own thing for the cause.
Right. But here's the thing. This group of people that I've mentioned in this are interconnected through all of them, or they are an offspring of them. I mentioned the WBCSD. That's the World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
Right.
That's a tab I think you may have over there next. It's the premier global CEO-led community of over 200 of the world's leading sustainable businesses working collectively to accelerate the system transformations needed for a net zero, nature positive, and more equitable future.
Just more of that language.
There we go. Engaging executives and sustainability leaders from business and elsewhere to share practical insights on the obstacles we currently face, integrated climate, nature, and inequality sustainability challenge. By co-developing how-to CEO guides from these insights, science-based target guidance, standards and protocols, tools and platforms to help leading businesses in sustainability drive, tackle climate, nature, and inequality challenges across sectors and geographical regions. So, again, more of the same language.
More of the same language. I feel like, since we've started to research all this, I have practically learned a new language.
It is. It's its own lingo. It's its own dialect and key hot words.
There are hot words. Yeah, there are key words in there.
And I'm going to move on into some of this other stuff, but something that I read, I heard said, and I think I have to agree with, it's all of the same ideas and people, just rebranded for our consumption.
I like the way you said that, because that's what it is, and it's just that's worded correctly.
Right, and so, that really, and there are so many agencies that are connected through this that I didn't even touch.
Right.
Because it's just, we could do a couple of episodes just digging into these organizations and just digging in. And folks, I didn't dig deep. I didn't dig hard. This stuff was just there.
It was just so much out there.
It was just literally one or two search engine options.
Right. And a lot of the things came from their own websites.
Right. All of this that I have found.
Yeah.
Minus,
with the exception of
with the exception of there
was an opinion piece.
There was an opinion piece in there, but most of this is their own wording, their own stuff.
And then Wikipedia. Some of that stuff's accurate, but
I went there primarily for biography.
Yeah.
Some things that were just undisputed.
I hope that I can choose the person who writes my biography.
I want to write my own Wikipedia.
Right. Just so that I'll be remembered the way I want to be.
Right. Now I'm going to transition into the last part of this, and we'll try to get through this real quick. Okay. Last year, the UN held a summit, another summit, 2021, and this was it was an agenda. It was a food agenda.
Foods. Is it the Food System Summit of 2021?
That's what that was the word I was looking for. Mm-hmm. The Food System Summit of 2021. And you can go into www.un.org and look that up.
So it's on the UN's website.
It's on their website.
Yeah.
This is
not making it up.
No, this was their aim to achieve. Let's see, you're in the about. I scrolled on down, but that's fine. Let's see, there it is right there. Generate significant action and measurable progress towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Again, that popped up. I wish I would have caught that sooner. I'll be honest with you. I would have had that that up, what that agenda was.
Well, not only that, but we've not just the sustainable development stuff, but we've also got the dates, 2030, 2050. I hear that so many times.
All the time. And
prior to this, I was hearing Agenda 21 stuff out
right,
there.
and that's, and that's interesting. That came out of the Rio Earth Summit in 92 was Agenda 21, and that was written by Maurice Strong and David Rothschild.
Now enters the
other family,
other families, the
right.
deeper families.
And I didn't bring that in because I just didn't really want to. That's a dive on its own. But it is essentially, and I'll just I've got it in my notes over here. But it is a how-to guide. That's what Agenda 21 is. It's a how-to guide for the local level to implement all of this agenda stuff, all of this food, environmental.
And you're going to be getting into that here in just a little bit, I believe.
I'm going to touch on
especially when it comes to the cities.
Especially when it comes to the cities and it comes to the food.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're focusing on is our food security, our food independence.
Right.
And so that's why I'm bringing this forward. The summit will succeed in identifying solutions and leaders and issuing a call for action at all levels of the food system, including national, local governments, companies, and citizens, back to our private partnership. Raise awareness and elevate public discussion about how reforming our food systems can help us all achieve the SDGs, Summit Sustainable Development Goals, by implementing reforms that are good for people and planet. I have to admit, it's the first time I've seen people and planet included, but develops principles to guide governments and other stakeholders looking to leverage their food systems to support the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Mm-hmm. These principles will set an optimistic and encouraging vision in which food systems play a central role in building a fairer, more sustainable world. Principles of engagement. Create a system of follow-up and review to ensure the summit's outcomes continue to drive new actions and progress. This system will allow for the sharing of experiences, lessons, and knowledge, measure and analysis of summit's impacts, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. The way this was, the way I heard this put, and reading that, it doesn't surprise me. Everything else, and this was Frederick Leroy. I know I messed that name up, but
I'm sure that we will butcher that one.
Yeah, sorry. But anyway,
call him Leroy.
Ice Age Farmer, you can change it. Corporate. This was actually some of the critique and corporate takeover. Small set of actors, not as inclusive as it was made to sound. In fact, I didn't even make a headline to me until I heard about it somewhere else. I didn't even know they had a summit last year. But resulting corporate control of the food systems in concert with the World Economic Forum. So, taking the power out of your hands and my hands and putting it into that of corporations. And moving forward with that, and I'm going to move on forward just so that for the sake of time. This next is from the Lancet, which is it's all tied in with that. I haven't had time to research this, but the thing is, it's the 21st century Great Food Transformation. We got the Great Reset in the World Economic Forum. We got the Great Food Transformation. This is their words.
Why do we need to transform? I kind of like it the way it is.
Yeah. Listen, they address that in their own words.
Okay.
Civilization is in crisis. We can no longer feed our population a healthy diet while balancing planetary resources. For the first time in 200,000 years of human history, we are severely out of synchronization with the planet and nature. This crisis is accelerating, stretching Earth to its limits, and threatening human and other species' sustained existence.
Wow, that's incredible.
Now this, the publication, Food in the Anthropocene, the EAT, which is a different organization we're about to hit here in just a second, Lance, Commission on Healthy Diets and Sustainable Food Systems, couldn't be more timely or urgent. So, I mean, they got a whole commission on sustainable food systems. Now, who is EAT? Now, as far as the Lancet, I'm going to back up. That's the Lancet.com. It's journals. You can look that up and read more about them. That was written by Tamara Lucas, Richard Norton. That was in 2019. So, I mean, this isn't
right.
New. It's not old, but it's not new. EAT. Environmental. It's eatforum.org is the as it's who EAT is. Whoa, I totally hit something I shouldn't have. That's the bad thing about computers, right? You click.
Yeah, you fumbled.
I did. I fumbled the football, bro. I don't know what I'm, okay. Mission values is a fair and sustainable global food system for healthy people and planet, leaving no one behind. To ensure success, we connect and partner across science, policy, business, and civil society, government, to achieve 5 urgent and radical transformations by 2050.
Okay, there's that 2050 again.
Right. They set an ambitious 10-point plan for the 2017 to 2020 period to help bring about the great food transformation needed. Each area requires collaboration, which is central to the philosophy and operation and philosophy of EAT. Again, go on to eatforum.org. You can read so much about these people. Now, this next part is it's talking about C40 cities. Now, this is an EAT program. It's out of that same organization. They had a C40 World Mayor Summit in 2019. So again, just a couple of years ago. C40 is a network of mayors of nearly 100 world-leading cities collaborating to deliver the urgent action needed right now to confront the climate crisis. Together, we can create a future where everyone, everywhere can thrive. Now, that's their opening statement about the C40. Go down here for just a second. Okay, our vision of a climate action that is ours is a vision of climate action rooted in equity, because we know that climate, social, and economic justice can only be achieved together. The change we need can be delivered through our chair's vision for a global Green New Deal. Go out and look that up, folks.
Oh, yeah.
Where mayors are working alongside a broad coalition of representatives from labor, business, the youth climate movement, and civil society to go further and faster than ever before. Didn't we hear that the last episode? Faster?
Right.
More involved. I think that was, yeah. The Global Green is an essential blueprint to delivering climate justice and strong, fairer economies that serve everyone. An integral part of building thriving communities, ensuring we have sustainable and just recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Collaboration has always been in the C40's DNA. In a crisis, it's needed more now than ever.
Why are we mentioning COVID-19 in this? It didn't start there. And why? I mean,
yeah. They updated their website, but
right.
The pandemic that has gone on to show us how quickly things can change. The way things are is not the way things have to be. Science tells us we must cut emissions in half by 2030 if we are to avoid runaway climate change. Nothing short of transformational change on a global scale is needed within the decade.
On the face of it, bro.
Yeah.
It sounds like, that they believe that this is what's going to happen. And I would be willing to buy all of this if I hadn't heard it all before.
Well, we've heard it all over the place.
Well, I've also heard, that the world was going to come to an end several times in the past, and it was all based on climate stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And those things, those times come and go. It didn't happen, and this is just like a rebirthing of the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
And it makes you wonder why.
They made they met in 2019. It's that summit, and one of the things they talked about was made new commitments to 2030 targets for clean air and sustainable, healthy food systems.
So many of these organizations seem to be on the same page.
They really do.
They keep mentioning these dates, 2030, 2050,
right.
all of these keywords. Every single one of these keywords are being mentioned by all of these people.
Oh, yeah.
All of these organizations.
Right. I mean, they actually have, if you go on to C40 and you go on to EAT, which is ironic that that's their name.
It was an accident.
I'm sure. But they have literally a global diet plan.
Yeah.
That does not involve.
I've seen that somewhere.
That does not involve animal agriculture.
What? I don't know that I want to live in that world.
Right. It's all plant-based. It's all factory or what they call ultra-processed
closed system.
Closed systems.
Right.
No beef, no pork. I didn't see anything in there about beef and pork and chicken and,
right.
all the things I like to eat.
So really, folks, what we're saying here is that, if this is the world you want to live in, I don't particularly believe the things that they're saying. There's a lot of information out there that refutes this information that they've got, but they have taken it upon themselves to be the organizations, the major move on this planet to decide for me and you what we've got to eat.
Right.
And the only way that they're going to be able to do that is to scare the pants off of us.
Scare us or take away any other option we might have.
Right.
Which, and I'm not going to dive into this episode. We can get into another episode as far as there is actually a spiritual and religious
aspect to this. Right.
movement.
When you dig a little deeper. That's right.
And I'm not going to, for the sake of time, I'm not going off there tonight.
Right.
It has to do with the Earth Charter. It has to do with Gaia. Which is Earth worship.
I would like to say
worshiping the creation, not the creator.
Right.
And there this thread is through it almost from the beginning, and certainly some of the same names and certain players are involved in that aspect too. So that's a little tease maybe for a future talk about.
Future episode,
But how do you get rid of an agricultural-based diet or an agricultural-based society? And that is you take away their ability to have that agricultural society.
In other words, in order for you to implement these changes, you have to destroy the agriculture that exists and has existed for 200,000 years, according to
their own words.
Their words,
right. A system that has worked and fed billions, trillions, I don't know.
Right.
Built societies, including our own. We started out as an agrarian society, and transition to an industrial and so on. And, we all got to eat. And, we're going to get into a minute, one of the last episodes I read about Ukraine and why it was so important. They can feed, their agricultural program can feed up to 600 million people.
Holy cow. Well,
that's one country.
And by the way, what I might just say there is that they can feed their own country with that.
Right.
Easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where we're going with this is our country can't.
Not at the present moment, no. But what is, bro, a crucial thing for any type of agricultural growing of crops or things like that, but particularly on a commercial level or on a large scale level, it's fertilizer.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're going to, that was a little segue transition, folks. We're going to move forward into that to talk about, you've heard the past, you've seen, we've linked these organizations and their plans for not only the environment, but our food and our food systems. And as they said, the great food transformation. And this was in their plans. We've seen in the reports all the way back into the late 60s and 70s. And here we are.
And I felt like that it was really necessary to cover the ground of history as it relates to these things, so that you can understand that the things that they are perpetrating upon us wasn't to solve a contemporary problem.
Right.
It's something that they've been thinking about. They've been scheming. They've been planning over decades.
Yeah, this was not something that happened because of the pandemic.
Right. And whether you believe the pandemic, and I'm not going to get into that, whether you believe the pandemic was plandemic,
right,
or if you believe that it just happened and they took advantage of it. Either
right,
way, what I can say is they definitely are going faster.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like Carrie said, since the pandemic has happened.
At a rate.
Right, intensity,
right, and
that we couldn't imagine,
could not imagine.
Yeah.
And after reading the history and digging into it and seeing, this was not this may have accelerated recently, but it has certainly not originated recently.
Right. So, what this whole thing is about is about the fertilizer crisis and understanding how it's related to the Great Reset.
Right.
And I'm going to start off with an article from Forbes magazine. And one of the things that it says is, we don't see the global fertilizer shortage situation abating anytime soon, states a note from New York-based CFRA.
Right.
I'm just going to share that with you.
Okay.
And it said that there were three key reasons
I see that.
that we are having this problem. One is natural gas, all right, which is used in the production of nitrogen-based plant food, is expensive, and prices for natural gas in Europe, which were already high compared to those in the U.S., have gone crazy this past year, according to the data from financial website tradingeconomics.com. Now, I'm just going to stop at that point and just say it didn't have to be this way.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about natural gas.
Natural gas.
We are a producer and an exporter of natural gas.
Oh, absolutely. It's we have large reserves and pockets of
Remind me. Wasn't it just about a year and a half ago that we were energy independent?
Absolutely, 100%. We were energy independent.
And so why does it have to be this way that we are now having a shortage of these things? Because they need it in order to produce fertilizer.
Right. And I'll give you a little side note, just a little tidbit as you're moving there. We talked about natural gas prices in Europe, and I'll just even get into petro prices in those countries, because, I mean, that's a big thing with the Ukraine and Russia and the XL, was it the XL? Yeah, it was the XL pipeline. Right, and all those sanctions, all those things. When I lived over there, when I lived in Europe, in Germany, what we paid for a gallon of gas here, they were paying for a liter of gas.
Oh, I know.
And there's like 3.3 liters to a gallon. So if you took it to today's prices, we would be paying, $13, $14 a gallon for gasoline.
Wow. Well, is it because they didn't have
they don't have any
refineries?
They don't have any refineries. They don't have they don't have it, so they have to purchase.
Are you saying they don't have the resources, or are you just saying that they don't have the refineries?
Well, there may be some pockets in, like I was in Germany. There may be some natural gas or some petroleum pockets. I'm not saying there's not. Now, their environmental rules would never let you get it anyway.
Okay.
They are very, very strict, and the Germans are very...
So they're on the bandwagon.
They're on the bandwagon. They're on the forefront, even in some cases, of some of the climate change organizations and climate mantras and stuff like that.
That's interesting that some of what we're seeing today has its roots in Germany.
It does.
I ain't even going down that track.
We'll leave that alone, but I'm just saying it's there, it's real, I've seen it. So anyway, go ahead with what you were saying.
Okay, so there was three reasons, and the second reason, obviously, and this is all current events,
right?
Was Russia and China have imposed export restrictions on fertilizer. Both are or were big exporters of plant food. The decline in exports makes getting the vital nutrients harder across the globe. China and Russia account for 29% of the world's export for nitrogen-based plant food. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. You kind of get the gist of what's going on. So now we're in a war with Ukraine. And when I say we, it is the West who is trying to push, the things for us to believe that the Ukraine is just an innocent victim and that poor Ukraine is all that I hear. Now, I'm not saying anything about the citizens of Ukraine and the things like that.
I'm
certainly not taking up.
They are the victims in a crossfire.
Right. I'm not taking up for Russia, so don't go there. But I also know that in the background that the global cabal is having power plays across the globe.
Oh, they're absolutely using this, I feel, as a cover,
right?
A distraction,
right?
To the accomplishment of their goals, to the accomplishment of bringing everybody to the table, so to speak. And again,
well, they're trying to force it to happen, actually.
Well, right, and I mean, because they've even put sanctions,
right?
And that's just making the market even
well. And I think that's
your third thing.
That is the third thing is that sanctions are also biting into the market as well. We expect these restrictions to tighten global fertilizers availability and push prices higher as demand ramps up amid a growing season.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I've worked in the agricultural food industry, if you will, on the business end of it.
Sure.
And I will assure you, there's no shortage of our fertilizer availability in the sense of some of the raw resources.
Okay, so right.
But what you can go down to the store or the co-op and buy that's in a bag that's preset, it's got a certain number of nutrients, it's got all of these ingredients and the nitrogens and things of that nature. That's where we're running into the trouble. It's this refined process,
Well, do they also have to refine that process? And I'm just asking because I really don't know.
Well, I mean,
do they have to go through the refined process, or can we find more natural ways like the farmers used to back in the day, or is that just not efficient enough to feed as many people as we've got to feed?
Right. I think it really came down to not only efficiency, but just availability. Because, I mean, I'm sure you remember when we were youngsters. I was younger than, but anyway, putting manure on the garden with Dad,
yeah, absolutely.
Going out and spreading it by hand, I say hand by shovel and whatever, but I mean, spreading that on our.
I think I've got it on my. Well,
I'm sure we got a lot of us. I still remember the smell. But anyway,
right.
But we spread it ourselves, But Dad had to go find that somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think farmers probably still do it. A little local farm.
Well,
I mean, not farmers. I would just say local people who like to grow crops.
Right. Be it chicken or be it turkey or something like that. But what I would say to that is no, on a large scale, when you start talking about feeding millions or billions of people, and even, our next door neighbor who likes to grow a small garden in their backyard probably isn't going that route. They're going to go down to their local box store, their local farmer's co-op or whatever. And nowadays, and buy a bag of fertilizer for whatever purpose and to accomplish what they want. And that's where on the local level, we're going to feel it. And on the big level is your co-ops, where these large scale farmers go buy their products, is these farm suppliers that are now going to struggle to get this product.
Right. I mean, I don't know how they're going to resolve this problem, but we are having a fertilizer crisis right here in the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
And even, I don't remember all the states that was involved in it, but I know Oklahoma's involved in it, Texas is involved in it, and a couple of other states who have decided that this year they're just not going to farm over millions of acres this year.
So again, when we read a report from 1970 that talked about paying farmers to not farm And here we are in 2022.
Well, I hadn't even heard that they were paying them, but just the
irregardless,
fact that
we're
they've
not
decided
farming.
that we're not going to farm, well, obviously that goes to supply and demand.
Well,
the demand is not going away, but the supply is.
Well, and bro, I'm going to link this. I mean, you brought this up, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, folks. I glanced at this stuff this week in preparation, but that's as far as I got. So when this is just coming
to your ears,
to my ears,
right,
as much as yours to some degree, but this thought that just popped in my head is very much what's about to be an impromptu thought, but it's going to connect a little piece of tissue for you that each and every one of us feel every single day.
Right.
You just mentioned millions of acres, correct? Or a large amount of acreage.
Yes.
That's not going to be farmed.
That's correct.
Now, we're from this part of the country.
Right.
And I know what they grow. And it is a lot of corn. It's a lot of wheat. It's a lot of those types of crops. Well, corn is in everything that you touch. It's in your gasoline that you put in your gas tank because of ethanol requirements. Yep. It's in your breads. It's in all of those products.
Oh, yeah.
We get into that. Well, guess what? Cows, your dairy cows for your milk and all those things, they consume those grains and corns and things as well. So the less of that stuff that is on the market is available because the crops aren't being grown and harvested,
right,
creates a problem within that specific.
So what you're saying is that when it harms wheat, it's not just harming a loaf of bread.
No.
It's harming foods for
all kinds of things.
All kinds of things because it's an ingredient in so many different foods.
Right. I mean, chicken feed has corn in it.
Right.
Has grains in it, has those type of things. Cattle feed.
Right. When they finish cattle.
Right. All those things have all of that stuff in it. And not to mention, as I said, we're feeling the pinch at the pump already on gas prices.
Right. It can only get worse.
That's right. Because if there's a shortage of corn, there was already that. I mean, that's why a loaf of bread costs what it costs. That's why a gallon of milk costs what it costs. It's part of the equation. Is when they implemented part of this environmental stuff, they implemented putting ethanol into fuel. It drove that price because now there's a higher demand than there is a supply.
Right.
You know, now it's great for the corn farmer, but not so great for for me and you at the pump.
No. And
or in the grocery aisle.
And here's something that I'll say also. And I mean, I'm sure that most of our audience has already seen this point, but today the prices are high. Well, this wave of not farming has not gone through yet.
No. This is new.
Right. This is still to come.
Right. And I mean, we're suffering the backlash of the shutdown.
That's right.
Already. And this is just going to go, but that was a little side note and I hated throwing it in. I hated sidetracking.
No, I think that was right on point.
That you see where this is going and what one thing, a fertilizer shortage, which is big, where that's leading and what that's going to cause. And that's just on a surface analysis without even digging in, just knowledge of trade. But let's move on with that.
Yeah, this next article that I'm going to touch on it's from the USDA again, and it almost mirrors. I'll share that with you.
Right. Yeah.
And it's from the USDA.gov.
Right.
And it says USDA now, and just tell me, does this sound familiar? USDA announces plans for $250 million.
I think we heard that number last episode.
I've heard that before for a different thing. It was the processing plants.
Processing.
Right. So they've got the $250 million investment to support innovative American-made fertilizer to give us farmers more, or U.S. farmers, more choices in the marketplace. And here's what they plan to do. And see if this sounds a little bit.
Remember, I'm getting a little repeat here. I'm feeling a little deja vu.
Yeah, it is a little bit deja vu. And I think after we get into this, you're going to say, yep, I've heard that before. Right. So the new program, and get this terminology, will support fertilizer production that is Okay, so you're going to have to ask yourself what they would not support.
That is, yeah. If they're only supporting certain things,
right?
Well, then they're excluding something,
right? So the $250 million is not going to do things that's against what they want to do. That's what I picked up from
Same thing with the last program.
Here it is, bullet point number 1: fertilizer production that is independent, which means outside the dominant fertilizer suppliers, increasing competition in a concentrated market. Good and fine. Made in America. We're going to get back to that in just a minute.
There we go.
Produced in the United States by domestic companies, creating good-paying jobs at home and reducing the reliance on potentially unstable or inconsistent foreign supplies. And we're going to get into that a little here in just a little bit because why are we in this position to begin with?
Because we did what we did.
Because of things that happened.
Right.
Things that the people who know better,
right,
who should know better,
right,
but perpetrate these things upon us. And we're gonna prove that here in just a minute.
Okay.
It's got to be innovative. Wait a minute. We already know how to do this. We have fertilizer processing plants.
Right.
Why does it have to be innovative before the government's going to support it?
Right.
Because the people are going to hurt.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Right. They're going to feel the pain.
They're going to feel the pain. So why not let's just solve the pain, and then we can get innovative.
Right. Let's
It's
solve the
because
problem.
they want us to feel the pain so that we will get innovative.
Right.
The mother invention is necessity, right? So
exactly.
that sort of thing. And so here's the magic words: sustainable.
Oh, wow.
Reduces the greenhouse gas impact of transportation, production, and use through renewable energy sources, feedstocks, formulations, and incentivizing greater precision in fertilizer use. Now, wait a minute. We're not going to be hungry just tomorrow. People are going to be hungry today.
Oh, absolutely.
People are feeling the pain today. So why don't we, what do they say? That the closest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Right. Oh,
well,
but
why
no.
are we going out of the way for other things?
Oh, absolutely.
Why don't we solve the problem?
I mean, it's, when you talk about the greenhouse gas of transportation, production, you're talking about, again, that's a fancy word for fossil fuels.
Right.
That's stretching
right.
around that.
So remember what I said up here is that the new program will support fertilizer production that is all of these things.
Right.
That means that they, by definition, will not support anything else, which means that they will not support our current technology and how we do those things. And we have the ability to do it, but I've got something else coming up. All right, so and then the last one is farmer focused, and I'm not going to get into that. I have some suspicions.
I want to make a statement.
Okay.
I just backed up into this. I'm going to set you up.
Oh boy.
Recent supply chain disruptions, from the global pandemic to Putin's unprovoked war against Ukraine, unprovoked, have shown just how important it is to invest in this crucial link in the agricultural supply chain here at home, said Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack.
Oh, yeah. And I've got a little bit more from Mr. Vilsack coming up right down here. In this one, and let's see if you see the irony in it. But I'm going to read this first.
Okay.
And then I have rewritten this statement the way I heard it.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
The way that I felt like that it should have been in order to be accurate. Okay, so this is Tom Vilsack.
You're trying real hard.
I'm trying real hard not to call him some other kind of sack. Anyway.
Right. And
he said, as I talk to farmers, ranchers, and agriculture and food companies about the recent market challenges, I hear significant concerns about whether large companies along the supply chain are taking advantage of the situation by increasing profits, not just responding to the supply and demand or passing along the costs.
That seems so unfair.
It does. So I rewrote it.
Okay.
To make it a little more fair.
All right.
This
What
is me.
did he really say?
Well, what I really heard and think he should have said is, as I talk to consumers across the land, I hear significant concern about whether big government are taking advantage of the situation by focusing on environmental social justice plans, not just responding to the crisis at hand.
Huh. Expecting them to do their job.
That's right. And it's just coming from Mr.
Vilsack.
For him to say that is completely ironic because they're totally taking advantage of these situations
Oh,
to
absolutely.
perpetrate ESG scores on everyone.
Well, right. ESG, corporate social.
Right. Corporate social responsibility, CSR. Right.
All of the big words.
All the acronyms.
Right.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, it's, and I will have to challenge Mr. Vilsack.
Yes.
That I seriously doubt he's actually had any conversations with any farmers, ranchers out there. Now, maybe some of the companies, but I promise you, I don't think he's walked onto any farms I know.
Well, just remember what he said in the past, that his focus was that he was going to focus on climate change.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's what Mr.
Vilsack.
Is focusing on when I feel like he should be focusing on something else. But
I
just to
don't know.
drive the point home just a little bit more,
Right.
we're going to go to an article that was written. It's called "American Can Use Supply Chains to Achieve New Foreign Policy Goals."
Right.
So if you don't think that they're opportunist, easy for me to say,
Right.
out there on this particular situation, that they are just chomping at the bits to implement these strategies that they've had for decades and planned for decades, this pretty much tells you
Right.
that this is the way that they see it, okay? And it was written by Orit Frankel.
Orit Frankel.
Orit Frankel, and we're going to get into who she is in just a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Orit Frankel.
Right.
Okay.
And before we do, that in this article from Orit Frankel,
Right.
there was something that was said here. It just says, since not everything can be produced in America,
Why not?
and I had to highlight that, even though I didn't,
Right.
I'm not going to read the entire thing that the United
Right.
States should strive to right-shore global supply chains
Blah,
to
blah,
achieve
blah.
a range of foreign policy goals. No. Why can't America produce?
Right.
Why is she saying that? Is it because we don't have the capacity, we're not intelligent enough, we don't have the labor enough to do it, or that there's over-regulation and we just can't do it?
Well, I think I would lean to the latter, and I also would think that, we have literally farmed out, so to speak. We have literally put so much of our manufacturing resources, parts,
Right.
overseas,
Right.
in the hands of others, giving up control of those things.
Right.
That we're now reaping the rewards of that. But now, can America? Oh, come on now, guys. We can do it.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Right. So I'm going to show you from the USDA, since we hit that, since not everything can be produced in America, I want to show you what's happening. This was a link that I've got from the USDA, and I want to pull it up here. It's called Fertilizer Trade by Year.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm going to have to make that much bigger so that I can see it.
Right.
I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it very much, but what it basically shows is that this is talking about fertilizer exports and imports by year.
Right.
All right. Now we're going to go back to the early days. The early days.
The early
if I can
days.
get over there.
Way back in.
Right. 1990. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not hitting it here.
Yeah, it's down on the bottom there, and it's a weird angle.
Right.
way back to 1990 when I was a young, strapping lad of, I won't say.
Right. So this is far enough back. In 1993, now it's not showing any imports from the United States. Now, I don't know if it's because that we just weren't importing fertilizer, because strategically, I would think that was a bad idea to import anything that had to do with our own food supply.
Well, I think, honestly, I think it was probably such a small amount that they just weren't tracking it.
Well, and I mean, it could be that. And I don't know, but we're gonna go on further down and follow this real quick. But I'm just going to make a point right here. In 1993, U.S. exports, and this is in short tons, was 18,372,330 short tons of export. Now it goes on down to all the different, it breaks it down to different things that we were exporting, where we were exporting it, and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm going to go on up, just for the sake of time, to 1995.
Right.
Because in 1995, we see a little bit of a different picture.
Absolutely.
Right. So what we see now is that in short tons, we were exporting 21,566,998 short tons.
That's a lot.
Right. And we were exporting 21,703,787 short tons.
Fairly balanced.
Fairly balanced in the trade. I mean, it would make me think, well, why are we doing it to begin with if we can do our own? Because, I mean, we're balanced, and a lot of these things were absolutely the same things that we were trading.
I'm going to give you something in a minute. I'm going to let you finish your point on this. Okay. I'm going to give you something on that.
And then I'm going to show you year to year, not that year. The year to year, now there's 20,000 imports and 19 million exports. And so as we go through the different years, will it let you? Time travel. Right. I'm just going to show you what it is in 2012, okay? Just to show you. And just, if you want to pull it up, you can look this stuff up, But our exports were only 10,783,383 in the year 2012.
Right.
Okay? To where our exports were 35,552, 35,552,395 short tons.
Right.
Now, throughout all those years, incrementally, year after year, we begin to import more, export less.
Right. And I will say that and this is what I was going to give you. Now, we're talking tons, and I'm just glancing over here, but I'm seeing those dollar signs measured in trillions. I mean, that's 4 trillion.
That's right.
4 trillion in exports and 35 trillion in imports. Or no, 12 trillion. I'm sorry.
Right.
12 trillion in imports. Now, here's the thing. What I was going to give you. Mm-hmm. Up and until this certain events that happened in the 70s and then certain events that happened in the 90s.
Right.
And I'm going to link these two together here in just a second.
Okay.
A large profit of the U.S. agriculture, not necessarily the individual farmer on the street, but the U.S. agriculture profit was on exports. We were sending our food out to things, but we were also spending mad amounts of money. We were, I think in the somewhere in the 40s, it was like $50-something million that we were spending in other countries to develop agriculture, to grow things, to bring things in. So we were bringing imports in and we were sending exports out, but our large profit was on our exports. 1970s, what you're talking about, the supply chain, and what we're talking about this with food.
Right.
Nixon began to normalize relationships with China. Things began to be going overseas. We began to open up that relationship. So China. So that's the 70s, and we've seen where that's progressed to 2022. The other thing, 1990s, you've seen that change in the numbers. You've seen the numbers start being tracked in the 90s. And you've seen the change. What happened in the 90s, late 80s and 90s? NAFTA.
NAFTA. Oh, okay.
North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yeah,
so again, things began moving back and forth in and out of our country in a lot freer way. And so decisions of policymakers to start making it cheaper for things to be imported into the United States and versus exporting. Production and labor costs were cheaper to bring it from over there versus spending the money to grow it here.
I see.
And so thus, I think that's where we began to see across our supply chain and including in fertilizer was it's cheaper to do it this way, you know, because of labor cost and because of lack of tariffs, because of lack of
so are you saying that we've already eaten our savings? Because what I'm saying by saying that is that in the 90s, whenever we wanted to get things cheaper, it kept our food prices cheaper. It kept our goods cheaper because they were sourcing it overseas and bringing it in, or they were sourcing it from, you know, south of the border or wherever they happen to be bringing it in.
Well, I mean, how many of our corporations, and
but
some
we've
of them,
ate through that. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I'm saying we have, or they have, they have woken up to the fact that they need us. We need them, but we need them more than they need us right now.
Well, yeah, and that was really the point that I was going to make, and the question I'm going to ask is, why in the world would we give up the ability to feed ourselves? That is a strategic security thing. It's a security risk for the United States of America.
Why would you put your food security in the hands? We talk about we've given it up to a global, but we've given it up to certain people, you know, or we've given it up to the box store, we've given it up to those things. Well, as a country, as a government, you know, we've given it up to foreign countries, to foreign actors, be it the entire food, being the actual food, or like in this case with fertilizer, a key ingredient.
Right.
You know, now.
Well, now, you know, I'm okay with, you know, giving up the manufacturing of a pair of jeans. I mean, I do like the warmth, and I think in certain times it's an important thing to have. But, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't rank up there with food. Oh, no. I mean, it's you've got to have clothing, but food resource is an absolute necessary. It's a necessity to survival. Right.
And we're blessed with an abundance of natural resources, abundant of arable acreage to grow food, to do those things. We used the term innovation earlier.
Right.
We were in the 20th century the most innovative country in the world.
That's right. That ever existed.
And the most generous. And why did we give that away? Why did we give that up? You know.
Right. And I couldn't really answer that. I would have to jump to conclusions that I can't jump to.
But I mean, I think we lead ourselves.
It makes everybody ask that question.
Right.
Why would we give it up? And that's the point that I wanted to make, you know, out of that is that for our fertilizer, you know, over time, we certainly have given that up.
Oh, right.
And I was just showing to where, you know, I showed you that to show you that we have been consistently giving it up. But don't forget, in the background, they have been scheming, making plans.
Certainly.
You know, in the most powerful groups, organizations, to perpetrate this stuff upon us.
Oh, yes.
And so you can see that their focus is not, and their heart is really not in making life easier for humans.
Oh, no.
It's about implementing the plans that they've had because they're chomping at the bits. And so let's see what her name is. Miss Finkel, is that what we said? Miss Frankel. Orit Frankel. In one part of that, to sum this particular article up, says, rethinking U.S. supply chains creates an opportunity to think strategically about new foreign policy goals and incentives to support those goals. It is time to encourage growth in developing countries that have strategic importance to advance labor and human rights and to support decarbonization.
Right.
Okay, so I think that
We just got to the environmental
right
track there.
There we go, and here we go using this, crisis as don't let a crisis go to waste. Is what I'm saying, and so it seems like we're doing it. And now going down to find out who Dr. Orit Frankel is. She's co-founder and CEO of American Leadership Initiative. Okay, I'm not going to go into all of those. So I just did a little research to find out who she is, and the point that I'm trying to make here is that this is really where their focus is, and that they are not caring whether we suffer. As a matter of fact, I think that they think that it's necessary for the human race to suffer a little bit so that they can implement, for whatever motives they have, the plans that they've made over decades.
And I wish I could remember where the quote came from. It was in one of their one of the readings or writings and stuff in the research. But in order for progress, or in order for change, there had to be great suffering.
Right.
And it's like, let's take a look. I mean, if I won't dig into it now, but I mean, if you just go back and look, even within our own country and certainly within the world, changes that occurred or things that occurred because of pain felt or because of suffering felt. And the bigger the suffering, the bigger the change.
Well, in history, do you think that there were leaderships that says, in order for us to change this into where we think the world ought to go, we're going to create suffering for people in order to have a better outcome? In other words, the end justifies the means.
Well, I think we've seen repeatedly that they'll operate under that function, that the end justifies the means. And here's what I would suppose to that, and I don't get me wrong, I can't sit there and hard prove anything, but just supposing about something, that they don't care how much we suffer beyond what it takes to achieve their goal.
That's what I feel. That's what I see. And I can come to no other conclusion after what I've read about all of this.
Right. And I mean, when you have, what did I have? 13 tabs, some crazy.
Well, that's about the amount you went through, but I think you had a total of 16.
Well, I had a lot more that I didn't even touch. And I've got pages of notes over here of things that I scribbled down about these organizations. But I mean, it's like you said, so many organizations to accomplish the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Why is there such a global concerted effort and so many people willing to go along with this? I mean, what's in it for them? Do they really believe that they're saving the planet?
Well, I think there are those who do.
Right. I think so. I think a lot of people get involved, and I think they worry about a lot of other things they don't need to worry about. But that's another.
And there's those who think, as we've said, that they know better for us than we know for ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, but at the core of it, then it's power, it's money, it's control, it's
right,
the usual. Things, the usual, but, and in some cases the ability, using it as a tool or a lever, to accomplish. But, the ultimate result, though, we can't necessarily do anything about their visions or their perspectives, but we can certainly do something about our reactions to it and our participation in it.
Right. And that's a good point. Do we just, and something that you and I talked about is on another episode, is that, we want to also address the fact that we want to take action against it.
Right.
But we don't want to lose our lives.
No.
Meaning to say that we should, in spite of them, we should go on living the American dream.
Right. We had that conversation just the other day that how do you research this? How do you work this stuff? How do you continue to go into this and not lose your mind?
Right.
I mean, when
That's
you
the
see
truth.
this overwhelming mountain of work that these people have been doing for 50 plus years,
Mm-hmm.
And we're just coming on board, how do we know? And it's just not being a willing participant in their little game, if you will, not being a willing participant, continuing to live life.
Right.
I mean, you make preparations and you make adjustments and you read the tea leaves, as we like to say, and make plans, make preparations in your life for coming things or for things that we believe are on the horizon.
Right.
But we still go on living. We still go on doing. We don't let fear.
And I think it's important
that
in a future article, in a future podcast or episode, that we do cover that, because that's important.
Right.
And so just real quick to try to, get this thing wrapped up, I just wanted to show you that Orit Frankel on their website, the American Leadership Initiative, just so that you know where their minds and hearts are in all of this, is that, it's just listing their accomplishments, prior to founding Ali, or it was a senior executive for General Electric Company, another resource, right? For 26 years. In that position, she was responsible for supporting GE's international sales policy objectives, government relations, and corporate social responsibility initiatives.
Oh, CSR.
There it is, CSR again. Or its extensive work with U.S. and foreign governments, as well as with a variety of stakeholders.
Another one of those trigger words.
Yeah. Then Orit worked to develop policy positions for GE on issues such as renewable energy and digital trade. And so here we are with the digital trading coming up again. Then some of the other people that she's surrounded. I'm just going to go a couple because there's a list of them, and I don't really want to go in it. I just want to give you enough information to understand what they're really all about. Okay.
Right.
And so this is Claude Fontaine. And what did Claude do? One of the things he did is developed and advised on sustainable and responsible supply chain programs over the past not 2 or 3 years, the past 30 years.
Right.
Okay. 30 years.
30 years. Wow.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. So he also developed and participated in implementing corporate risk management programs for supply chains and other ESG challenges. So he was also involved in the ESG scores.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was important.
Right. So, he was, and let's see about this other individual. There was another individual down here. Anyway, they have a whole list of people that she has. This is an ALI senior advisor. She's got several senior advisors, and it's just stocked plumb full of all of those keywords.
Wow. It's amazing.
And so she's writing an opinion piece for The Hill. And that opinion piece obviously was, for American can use supply chains to achieve new foreign policy goals. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's really what we're trying to say here, is that this is intentional. They're doing this on purpose. And they don't have a heart for humanity. They may say that they do, but it seems like they don't have any problem making other people suffer for their plans.
Well, I was going to say it's a rare thing that I have seen where they mention all these things, but they don't mention people. And that's been one of the weird things I've noticed with it, is they don't mention people a lot.
Right.
Now they'll mention groups, or they'll mention things that are, underserved, or they'll mention equity, and they'll mention these keywords, but really the concern for the individual person is not there. And so, I mean, I think we can, I think we've made a good point to,
Made a long point.
well, right, of where we were going with that, which, like all good broadcasters, there's background things of technical difficulties we have to deal with.
Man, we just had one, so
and we just had
okay.
one.
We're
but
all good here.
So I
anyway,
think we've nailed that down about us.
I think we've whipped that dog.
And
whipped that dog.
And continued to
whip that dog. That poor dog.
Right. But folks, in this episode, we dug into the history and the timeline of the environmental movement and introduced you to some key players and organizations in the global cabal that have taken control over food, energy, and other resources. We also spoke about the fertilizer shortage and hopefully enlightened you to the fact that none of these shortages we are seeing are by accident or happenstance. And as future episodes are put out for your learning and consumption, we'll continue to uncover the truth. We'll show you just how deep this rabbit hole goes. But keep in mind, the biggest thing we can do is realize that it's going to take us all to stop this and protect our families and communities. And we hope we're providing you information that is helpful to you and entertaining as well. And please tell your friends and family and tune in. And hey, you can listen to us on iHeartRadio and Spotify. Just search for the Farm2Table Direct Show. That's the Farm2Table Direct Show. Or hey, you can even watch us on our YouTube channel, the Farm2Table Direct Show. That is the Farm2Table Direct Show. Detective pattern. Also, you can email us at farm2tabledirect@protonmail.com. That is the table direct at protonmail.com. Or hey, even better, visit our website, thefarm2tabledirect.show.com, and look for a list of our producers and near you that you can search for them. We've got them out. We're working on getting them out there. And hey, if you're a producer, go ahead and contact us so we can add you to our database of local producers and get you tied in with our network, and hopefully
definitely
help you get you some customers. But also that we build this community and we build this network of consumers and producers, and we can all build those relationships. That's the key to survival, is building relationships. And,
right.
But folks, bro, is there anything else you got to throw in as a last minute?
Just that, the importance that we're going to drive home each and every time is that we've got to make those local networks with people who is either a provider or people that may be a consumer, and that we should do this on locally in order to keep or arrest that control back out of the hands of those people who don't really care about us.
Right, and I think that was something that was crucially important. I mean, our founding fathers, that was their whole thing, was that a government or an organization from afar should not be governing us here.
That's right,
and that's the thing. So folks, just keep that in mind, and and until the next episode, prepare for the unexpected
and keep it local.